for lasting love. Dating advice for lasting love. And I am joined by my husband of 27 years, Ted.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thanks for doing this. This is really fun.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Ted and I have never done recording together or video together or really anything. But we've done work-related things together because Ted's a counselor as well. So he's a licensed mental health counselor, and he's been working in the field as long as I have. So we
Right.
often talk about our craft, but so I thought we'd have him on because our anniversary is Valentine's Day. So that's this Friday. And I'm trying to put a lot of videos out this month about relationships, good parts of relationships and maybe not so good parts of relationships. And in this episode, we're going to talk about both. We're going to talk about the good things in relationship, what you're looking for, what you want. And I know everybody has different opinions about that, and there's space for that. And then also we might talk about some red flags, but if we don't get to too many red flags, I have lots of videos on red flags, and I will link to them below for you to watch after this. So we want to give dating advice because we have a lot of peers, clients, young, middle-aged, older, who are dating, and it's a hard time in the world to be dating because there's not the pool of people. Like, we're not getting together in person and doing things where there's places to meet people. And so most people are meeting their partners online, which is great. That's where the pool is. But there is some trickiness to it. And we don't have experience because we've been together for 27 years. So we've never done it. But though we've walked many, many people of many, many ages through the process, that doesn't mean we have experience. But we're going to talk a little bit about, from our own experience, what was important to us, so that if you're in that world where you're trying to find a partner, you could get clear about what you want and then reverse engineer it to take steps in dating, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think even though the circumstances are different, right? And the generations are different and the specifics are different, but I think there's a lot of stuff that over the generations, I think, stands true. A good relationship is a good relationship, and a healthy one is a healthy one. So, I
Yeah.
don't know.
So I thought we'd start by thinking about what you value, having you reflect on what you give value to. What is the most important thing? So if you pictured an ideal relationship, and you probably have some people in your life that have a good relationship, they laugh together, they smile together, they have affection, they've been together for a really long time. You could tell that they like each other and that there's no tension around them. They get along. When you are around that person, when you're around those people, what do you like about the relationship? So what are you looking for? Get clear about that. Because a lot of people approach dating of like, I hope someone likes me, and let me see if I can make them like me, and let me try to see if someone values me. But you really want to be clear on what you want. And then you're assessing the people if they're worth you spending more time with them. And I don't mean they're unworthy and like they're not good or anything like that, but like, are they treating you like you're worthy? They treating you like you're special? Are they treating you with respect? Those things are important to assess and worry about before you worry about somebody else liking you. Are they worthy of your time? Do they make you feel valued? And there's a lot of ways that people could help.
Oh no, I was just going to say, because you were talking about if you're observing a couple that you think has a good relationship, it is good to remember that no relationship's perfect, and so you might be like, "Oh, I'll never have a relationship like that. They're so great. They never have any problems," which isn't true.
Yeah, it's a good
There's a
point.
big difference between having a perfect relationship, which nobody has, and a really healthy one where you enjoy their company. And so I was just thinking that as you were saying that, Jodi,
It's a
keep
really
that
good
in mind
point.
as you're observing.
Like, there's nobody's perfect.
Right. Yeah.
We're not perfect. And
We seem perfect.
we seem it from the outside. But nobody, yes, you're not looking for that perfect partner that everything's going to be
Right.
perfect in, because people are different. We've been raised in different ways. We have different assumptions about things. And that's why it's important to get really clear about expectations. Most couples that come to me in counseling make assumptions about what they expect from the other person, but have never talked about it. They've been together for years
Right.
or maybe decades, and they've never talked about it. They just assume that the other person should know. They're like, I don't know why they did that. I'm like, you didn't ask them? It like boggles my mind. But it happens a lot. We're afraid to ask questions. We're afraid to get clear on things because we don't know if that's going to bother the other person or whatever. And so if you're dating and you want the best dating advice that we could give you, get clear about what you want in the relationship, what you're hoping for. What are some of your values that you hope that other person has, so you're aligned? And that's a basis, right? The basis is, are you aligned in what you value? Are you aligned in what is important to you? Because what's important to you is what you spend your day doing. And if you are spending your day doing things that's not important to you, or your partner spending their days doing things that you actually devalue or think that it hurts other people or something, obviously that's not a good fit.
And it might take some time to do that. It might take some time to figure that out, you know. So there's no set time to do that. It's just a pattern you might notice, I think, right?
And
Um,
I don't know what you lost me.
no, I was saying that it might take a little time
Oh, to figure out
to
if they're
figure
the one.
out
Yeah,
if this are you enjoying your time with them, instead of saying you should know after 2 weeks, or
yeah,
that's all
yeah.
I was saying.
Right. Sometimes right away you know that
See
this
that good
person.
communication? I don't know what you're talking. It was very clear that Jody did not know what I was talking about.
Ask immediately. If you don't understand something, don't make an assumption, because that leads to the most misunderstandings ever,
Mhm.
is when you don't understand and you assume that you understand. Though we don't know that we don't understand. We think we understand, and it's usually like negative to ourselves or to the relationship if we misunderstand, and that has negative consequences. And so you might as well ask. This sounds like you're criticizing me. Is that what you want to be doing? Those kind of things. Okay, this is what's so hard about this episode, because there's so many different scenarios. When I give one advice, I know that there's tons of couples or tons of individuals out there that I'm not actually talking to, because their experience is the opposite, right? So some people need to open their heart more, and some people need to set more boundaries. So it's hard for us to be like, listen, open your heart more, because if everybody listens to that advice, that could be dangerous for some people. So this is a very hard episode.
Mm.
I'm realizing that as I'm saying something, and my mind is going, some people shouldn't have that advice, actually. Some people are in relationships where people who are trying to control them, or trying to regulate their own emotions through that person, and it's not a safe place to do some of the things like witness the other person, cheer them on, use physical affection. We need the basic of mutual trust and secure relationship before you really open yourself up that much. And you deserve that. You could heal in relationship, and you could find somebody who has already done some work, and you can match with a person like that. That doesn't mean never match with anybody who's got a single half a red flag. No, because people do heal in relationships, and people learn if they're open to that. If they're open to that, it's a beautiful thing, and it works really nice. So let's talk about a little bit of some of the things that we do that's important to us, that has made our relationship sustainable. Barely. No.
After tonight,
26 and 26
well, it
years and
lasted a long time.
364
It was
days.
good. It was good while it lasted. Yeah, let's talk about some things that are.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the first one you were talking about, I think it's kind of a cliche, but it is communication is key, and I think there's a lot of pieces that fall under communication.
Like
We
what?
can talk about specifically. Well, I was just thinking, uh, you know, if conflict comes up with couples, partners, and I'll speak specifically. Jody is so good at, like, apologizing, and and I am not good. I have a delay on that. I'm like, oh, how does she do that so well? So that's just one example. That falls under communication, I think, is like, am I going to let that stew for days, or should I just go out and say respectfully my feelings? And so, that's always a challenge for me. And so that was one example, I guess. It's just
I think communication is there's a lot of mystique around communication, because sometimes we think that explaining like your true self, but you're criticizing the other person, is not necessarily helpful. So if you're criticizing the other person, meaning like name calling,
right. Yeah.
that I wouldn't say you need to do that for good communication, because that's just hurts a relationship. That's an aggression. That is a violent thing to call somebody a name. But if you're negotiating relationship parameters, how do we want to see this? How do you see this? How do I see this? How do we want to compromise to know that this is how these are the expectations we're going to have around dinner, maybe? Do people eat together, or do they, who makes dinner, or what kind of food do you eat? There's a lot to compromise just around that one thing. Who gets the food? Some people like to just order out, and some people like to make food. I mean, there's so many different variables. And if we assume that my way is the right way, then you're not getting anywhere. But if you talk about the relationship parameters around meals or feeding the family, then you have clarity. That's just one example. But so negotiating relationship parameters.
Mhm.
It's something I do with all couples that I work with, and we do all the time. And you renegotiate all the time. So it's
Right.
not, we don't have expectations on each other. We have negotiated parameters that we respect because we've mutually agreed upon them. And so that's when I was saying a lot of couples just make assumptions. Oh, they should just do that. I want them to just do that without even, I shouldn't have to ask. I want them to just do that. And I'm like, you could negotiate what you want, right? But people assume that that's how all people feel, that they should just know to do something without me even having to ask. They never thought about that. But if you negotiate the parameters around that thing, I want them to ask me about my day or something like that. If you're clear and you negotiate, does this sound like a plan that we could both agree to? Then if they're breaking that, that's a different thing than if they're just not thinking of it because no one's ever taught them. They might not have grown up in a house where people say, "How was your day?"
Mhm.
They might be like, "We respect people. If they don't want to talk about it, don't ask about it." There's a lot of people like that. And anyway, so negotiating relationship parameters, remember that. One of the best things about us, I think, is, and I share this as much as I possibly can to the people I work with, but we say thank you for the littlest things. We thank each other for every like stupid little thing that
Thank you,
we do.
Jody.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
We get like doing the dishes or doing the one dish or getting or cleaning, whatever we do, if it's housework for sure. I'm just using those as examples.
Right.
But whatever we do for each other's families or for our own families or for around the house or for the kids, we thank each other, even if it's tiny.
We do. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get. It's not. We're not doing it 20 times a day, or but we do it every day though,
We
a
do it
couple
every
times
day.
every day. And I think that's the next step of that. When Jody was just talking about, once you've set those parameters and you fall into your roles kind of naturally, or maybe you've negotiated them, it is good to remember that that person is still working hard to do that. And instead of just in your head, I mean, I have a tendency to be like, well, that's your job. That isn't that, that's the, you do the bills. Isn't that what you do? But I think it's really important to be like, thanks for doing that today. And so it might be a small thing, but
Well,
it's an
it's
important thing.
acknowledgement, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Right.
validation. It's a small in small ways we could continue to validate each other all day, right? So give value to each other. So the other person feel valued when they're thanked. So there's a lot of ways you could acknowledge somebody. You could compliment them, you could
Right.
thank them, you could express appreciation, which is a little like thanking but different. You could do physical affection. You could listen and have compassion, say, really understand, oh, that must have been hard, or those kind of things. All of these ways, or you might say, hey, I saw that you did that and that inspired me, and I'm going to do that too. That's another way to acknowledge somebody. But these ways of acknowledging each other makes the other person feel valued, makes them feel like they're worthy. And that's what humans need, right? That's almost why we're in relationships in the first place. We're social beings. And so we're in relationships really to witness each other's lives. And when I say witness each other's lives, it's about, like, if you're not witnessed, you didn't happen,
Mhm.
right? So you are not a self unless you're in a relationship. You're not a self unless you're witnessed. It's like if the tree falls in the forest, is there sound? That's what we're talking about. When people are isolated, it doesn't do well for them. They don't feel good emotionally or mentally or even spiritually and physically. Usually, people who are isolated a lot, their lifespan and health span is shortened. You need to get out and be with people. But, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. You could be with people and they reflect you back, right? So we want to witness for our life. We want acknowledgement because that's how we self-actualize. When we know we're worthy, when we feel solid and robust in ourself, we have a robust sense of self.
Mhm.
And so that thank you is it's not just like, oh, it's a nice thing that we do. It's literally what we need to survive.
Right. Yeah. Actually, when Jody was talking there, I was thinking, you know, you always see articles or in social media or something about, how to improve your relationship, or it's all over the place. And so many things are seen or talked about that are, extravagant plans, or go on a fancy dinner, or whatever. But it's this. I think most of the things on our list, if Jody and I were to list them, would be the simple things. They don't cost anything. It's these small little moments during the day that genuinely happen, and probably add the most strength to the relationship. I think it's those daily little. Well, what else is on there? What
Yeah.
else is our daily stuff? We
I
we so yeah, we
mean,
acknowledge when we do
listen,
stuff. We listen.
apologize,
I know that
we cheer each other on.
right. We I know I tend to I'm in my head a lot, and so one
So
one
are
thing
we
that
all.
one thing that I try to remember to do is actually verbalize a compliment. So if Jody had on an outfit or something that I thought was really great, of course, every day. Um, I try to verbalize that instead of just in my head be like, "Oh, she looks really pretty today." It's important, I think, to have your partner, say it. Otherwise, they'll never hear it. So
Right, right.
it's
No
just
one's going
it's
around saying
lost.
that. Everyone's
So
in
yeah,
their own agenda and in their
right,
own
yeah.
head. And you know, I tell people all the time, even young people, when they are trying to make connections with other people, I say the best thing you do is give a compliment.
Mhm.
Ask them about themselves, give them a compliment, say, like, your earrings. Or even if you're just starting to get out of isolation, go to a coffee shop, tell the barista that you like their earrings or whatever. Or thank you for the prettiness on the top of your cappuccino. Make a compliment. I literally had a client who's in college right now tell me that young kids don't do that. And I was like, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. People are craving that because everybody is in their own agenda, in their own head. We do barely listen to each other, let alone notice and see each other. And people are craving to be seen. People are so craving to be seen because we want to feel valued. So important with screen time increasing so much. One of the things that people are being disconnected from is their sense of mattering, their sense of worth, their sense of value, and valuing another person. Hey, let me just plug this my download here. This is a Gen Z survival guide, mental health survival guide. And yeah, jodiamond.com/guide. This survival guide tells what is going on and why the mental health crisis is so huge. It includes how it affects relationships, because it does. You know, our state of our relational health, our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, and our physical health all is affected by this modern world. And how does that work and how can we counter it? It's all in that guide, so you better get it. We have some questions on Instagram, And so Joe, my producer, is going to put up my Instagram as it's at Dr. Jodi Eamon. I put out that people could ask questions for tonight, and so we got a few questions. So we're going to head to those now. But if you don't follow me on Instagram, please come follow me on Instagram. I would love it. I lost 18,000 followers when I got hacked. When I was doing hospice with my dad, it was awful. I lost my whole Instagram account, so I have to start from scratch. So it's a little tiny baby account, and I need you to come over and help me grow it. So one of the questions was, what is the best way and the best time to bring up conversations in a loving way? I love that question.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's so intentional and kind. Isn't that like, this person who
Mhm.
asked this question is just like cares.
Right. Yeah.
I love that.
Right. Yeah. No, I have an answer. Are you
Good.
laughing because you think I don't have an answer? I have an answer. Yeah. Well, the first thing that occurred to me, or when I heard that, was as I was processing it, I was thinking, I turned that question on its ear a little bit. It's, there are times where you shouldn't ask the question. If it's something stressful or maybe something has, uh, negative has happened, or somebody's not in a good mood, whatever. Instead of I think this is what I think. In a great relationship, I think there are more times than you think where you can ask a question that's
Good.
tough,
That's good. That's good.
and you'll be successful.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be like, I'm going to make their favorite dinner. You don't. I think that I think that stuff works less. I think you just wait for a moment where it's calm, or you're in your sort of normal routine, and then you can,
It's hard. I'm
sort of,
assuming that this person knows this conversation might be triggering to their partner. And we could be talking about a friend or a parent or a sibling, right?
yeah.
We could, what's the best way to bring up conversations in a loving way? I'm assuming that they're difficult conversations. That might be something, it might be some feedback that you're trying to give the person. Go on Instagram. I did a live today about giving feedback in secure relationships versus in relationships that are insecure. But what's the best way? I think that when we say, I have something to talk about right away, that puts people's insecurities up. They know, oh, you don't want anyone to say, I have to tell you something. You're like, oh, it's going to be bad, right? So you might not want to premise it like that. And I don't know this could be so many different things. But one thing that I really like is when this idea of asking for what you want instead of complaining. And it's not universally applicable, but let me give you an example. So if you have a situation where it didn't really go well and you want to give feedback and be like, this didn't really go well. But if that situation came up again, what if you invited an idea? So say somebody didn't want to spend time with you, or you felt like that, like you were all ready to hang out with your partner, and they didn't want to. They went to sleep early, or I'm not talking about you.
I didn't think you were talking about me.
um, they just made other plans or something, and they didn't. So you could complain about that or give feedback. I felt really bad about that. That's an idea. That's an option. But also you could say, hey, this weekend, why don't we do something together? Right? So you could ask for what you want instead of complaining. You don't have to do that all the time. And in some situations, that's not applicable. But in some things, it might be better or might be more welcome to ask for what you want instead of complaining about something, instead of giving negative feedback. If somebody is crossing your boundaries or disrespecting you, of course, that might be a different situation. But if it's a misunderstanding or they just might not know, this might be a better way to go. It's just one idea, depending. But I guess they always say when you're talking to kids, they always say give some compliments first and like sandwich it in if you have some negative feedback. Um, but really stick with you, like how it made you feel, what it how it affected you and what the problem is, or how it affected that. Maybe you're sticking up for another person and you have to talk about how it affected the other person.
But
If your intentions are to be loving, it does go a long way to like keep your energy down, keep it curious instead of accusatory. Like you could have curious energy when you approach conversations with somebody, and you're like, I was just wondering what were you, what did you think about this? Um, if you approach things with curiosity, that also takes energy down. The people are much less defensive that way.
Yeah, I really like when you said, if you approach it being loving. I think that is a huge difference. The other cliche you hear about in relationships all the time is like, know yourself before you can, or love yourself before you can love someone else. I think that's really there's some truth in that. I think, so why am I okay? Something's bothering me, and I really want to talk to my partner about it. Why? It's really good for me, and um, I'm passing this advice on. Kind of process like, okay, is this something that always bothers me, and it's just my stuff? Um, Sometimes I have to sort through that before, and then sometimes it's like, yeah, that is just me. I don't need to say that to my partner. So I'm assuming that um, the person that asked that question maybe has done that already, but I'm just saying that's something to remember as well. So yeah, if you're coming from a point of like, this is I really love this person, I really care about this person.
Like if the relationship's at the center,
Right,
right?
right,
You're giving the feedback hopefully to uplift the relationship
right,
or put the relationship in a better place. That's heard. If you're trying to prioritize yourself over the other person or something,
right,
that might not be. But that's also not universally applicable, because sometimes you want to give feedback to somebody who's really defensive, or he gaslights you or guilt trips you or something like that. And that is, you can't control the other person. Sometimes you could be so loving and you could do it all the right way, but
mm,
the other person still is going to react bad because they feel they are insecure. They have insecurities that make them really push back when they think they're being criticized. Even if you could say it the gentlest way and you're really not criticizing them, they might hear it as that anyway. So you could be as loving as you can, and
right,
sometimes it helps a little bit, but there's still some people who are, with because of their insecurities, will still get defensive and not take it right, and escalate things. So you know who you are in those kind of situations. You could curb it a little bit. You could ask for it instead of complaining. You could do different things, or you could set boundaries that they can't cross. Watch my Instagram live from today if you want to know more about that. But let's go to another question because we only have a few minutes left.
okay,
See what I mean about, you have to have a caveat. There's so many different scenarios that we could give advice, but in some secure relationships and insecure relationships, the advice is like almost the opposite sometimes.
yeah.
So okay, so what's the most important thing? Oh, what's the most important thing that you do to support the relationship? We already mentioned
Well, we kind of talked about it a little bit.
that. Okay,
Yeah, mm,
I brought up that quote. I we did talk about that.
okay,
I was gonna say listen.
L- yeah,
Listen, like hear
right,
each other. That's another
sure,
way to acknowledge each other. Listening is
right,
active listening is a huge way to make someone feel valued. So if your partner is not a good listener, it's hard. So if you're dating, the best dating advice I could give you, like find somebody who listens, who acknowledges you, who says thank you, who compliments you, who sees you, how you see yourself. It's unique to have somebody actually see you, see the good in you, even though you have mistakes and no one's perfect and whatever, but still sees that there's something good in you. Even when you make mistakes, they still see you. That is your person.
hmm
So let me get one more here. So someone was talking about if they have conflicting messages. So either messages from their inner critic or maybe from others, like from thought leaders, saying, don't settle. Right? So a lot of dating advice is like, don't settle. You deserve to not settle. And then there's other advice that's like, it's not going to be perfect, and it's better to have a companion, right? It's better open your heart and not look for perfection. And so people are like, well, what do I do? What would you recommend to that person?
Well, I think it really falls to you as the person. And so if you have decided that you've been alone, and it's those get to be really hard times, and you have found somebody that, yes, they're not perfect, or there's things that you'd love to see change. I guess it depends on, are you getting what you want out of that relationship? If that's, it's not, I feel like it's not my place to say whether, you should, um,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
of course.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, um, I think everyone has to make their own choice on that, as long as you're being honest with yourself, and not, there's a difference between, I think we've talked about this before. There's a difference between fear. If you're just afraid that you're going to be alone, some people do have a wonderful life and they enjoy being alone, and um, but if there's a, I think if there's a, well,
Also, what I was gonna say,
go
there.
ahead. You're gonna come rescue me from that?
Let me wrap this up here. If you consciously decide that you're gonna stay in a situation that's not perfect and you're gonna work for it, or you're both deciding we'll do the best that we can here, you could consciously decide to stay there, maybe because family or kids or something like that, and and it could be freeing to make that decision consciously. But then sometimes people make the decision feeling like they're trapped, or there's a fear based like attachment to feeling like you can't get out or can't do anything else. And there's such a hopelessness in that they don't feel good at all, you know? And they stay, but they don't feel good. They don't try, because if you're never going to leave a person, you don't try, right? There's no value in that relationship. And so you don't try. And the other person might not be trying either. That I wouldn't recommend. If you're going to stay together and you could do that. People could do whatever they want. You could stay in a relationship like that if you want. But if you're wondering, um, yeah, sometimes it's better. I know people who got divorced and their husbands are terrible. I mean, they're women, I guess. They're heterosexual women, and their husbands, that was a terrible situation. And it's kind of so hard. They almost wish they didn't do it. And that's rare. Right? You don't hear about that often, but I think that's important to think about. Um, but not to settle. It depends on how old you are. It depends on how realistic you are about what settling means. It's a relative term,
it's a relative
right? It's
term, yeah.
totally relative. It could be an excuse, or it could be like, no, I'm not interested in this person. This is not a good fit. It's not aligned. Of course, you don't want to settle. It's just a term that really tends to confuse us more than anything else. You know, your heart knows. Your heart knows, and sometimes attachment seems like your heart, and it's not your heart. That attachment of like, I gotta hold on because I can't go without this person. That's not your heart. That's attachment. That could be a whole other video, I think.
I think that is.
Yeah, I think that is. Well, thank you so much for everyone who submitted questions. And you could always do that on social media or in my email. If you want to sign up for my email, get that guide, and then you get the email and you know all about all the topics for the show. You could even put it on your calendar. You see a text down here on the bottom. You could text Jodi to this number, 833-458-3845. Text Jodi there, and you're getting on my text list. And what happens is I text out the topic, I ask questions, you could ask me questions. When you text me back, it's just to me. You get private access. So call up, so text in. And also, if you want to be a call in for the show, you can do that too. So many options of ways you can participate and hang out and get some help directly from me. But I'm on live every Monday at 8 p.m. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.